Hey everybody, it's John D. I'm joining you here today in a little webcast to discuss a film series and a video game. Now, in the early 80s, in 1984, there was a film that came out that didn't get a lot of attention. It was revolutionary in its special effects. It started off as being a film about a kid who's really good at video games, and it took place in space. There were space battles. It was kind of violent. It was a hard PG rating, but in the age of Star Wars, Star Trek, and Indiana Jones, there was no way it was going to succeed. But it's a movie I remember when I was a little kid, and it sticks with me, so it has that special place even though you don't hear about it much anymore. And that movie is The Last Starfighter. Now, The Last Starfighter, what is that movie, you're wondering? Well, it's a movie about a teenage kid who is particularly good at an arcade game, which is located at the front office at his trailer park. Now, he's very, very good at this game, which, by the way, is unbelievably technically advanced for 1984. It's a very, very cool game. I would love to have been able to play it if it was real. But he's really good at this game, so good, in fact, that the game becomes reality after he beats it. A man named Centauri comes down from Rylos to bring this boy in, Alex, so that he can join against the fight against Zur and the evil Ko-Dan Armada. Now that's pretty damn cool, and for some reason it never made it really big. But they did make video game adaptations of it. And this adaptation was for the NES. And let me tell you, it's garbage. In the movie The Last Starfighter, our main character Alex played an arcade game that was so cool and advanced that it was actually kinda shocking that it was located at the front office of a trailer park. And amazingly, nobody seemed to ask any questions about it during the time. The game was incredibly technically advanced, as was the film. The film used special effects and computer animation really for the first time in such an extensive way. I mean, look at this arcade game. It even has a symbol that's pretty close to the Atari symbol, so it made sense for the time the film was released back in 1984. In fact, the arcade game from the movie has been recreated and actually turned into a real game that you can download off of a website. This game was actually developed with the arcade game in an effort to create new bonus features on the DVD that was released recently for The Last Starfighter. The NES game was released in 1989 by Mindscape. This was a full 5 years since the movie came out, and the movie having not done that well itself, it wasn't exactly the best time to release the game. Now, the NES game is god-awful. I mean, here it is. Number one, the music is there from the film. That's kind of cool. But even watch the demo. Even the demo sucks. Like, it doesn't get more than 2 seconds in. The game itself is incredibly difficult. Your controls basically are on rails. You can move up, down, left, and right, similar to the game Defender for the Atari 2600, where you stop and you can turn back. Your speed is dictated by whether or not you're constantly pressing right or pressing left. The more you press right, the faster you go. But the problem is the game is three-dimensional. Top-down 3D. Similar to Zaxxon, except unlike Zaxxon, you can't really tell what's standing up or what you can run into. The only way you can tell what is an obstacle to run into is the shadow that is cast. But you don't notice the shadow until you slam into the item. And you don't even know what the item is. It's just some sort of protrusion from this metal thing. So you get to the end of the level, you have to turn back to defeat everything there before you move on. I'll tell you, I've never gotten out of the first level, so I don't know what the fun is. But basically, it's kind of cool that they actually made a video game for The Last Starfighter. But if you were hoping to actually play the game Starfighter, you're out of luck. In fact, the game released for the NES was a port of a Commodore 64 game called Uridium. There was a prototype made for the Atari 2600, but it never made release. It ended up finally being released as a game titled Solaris. The Atari game planned for the 5200 and 800 computer series made it pretty far along in the programming process, but was never fully released. However, there are prototypes that are out there and are playable. The history of The Last Starfighter is kind of cool. Even at the end credits of the film, it says stay tuned for the Atari arcade game. This arcade game was never released. It would have been pretty technologically advanced, but apparently it was going to cost about $10,000 each. Because of this, Atari felt it was too expensive to invest, especially since the movie never ended up doing too well. So in order to immerse ourselves into the world of The Last Starfighter, what we have is this crappy game.